Hello. So I have been called to action by the V of Model V himself. I've got some water, I've had a snack, made a quick PowerPoint. I'm just gonna run through Ben's Model V, compare it a bit to Model G as a comparison. Also, just because I'm fairly comfortable with Model G. And yeah, I'm going to start off with these subfunctions, and I'm just going to be staring at this this graphic for a lot of the time. So with the subfunctions, I've just made a couple of notes here. Yeah, so with the subfunctions, I find them to be quite an elegant solution. I like how they fit into every single slot, and there's always assertive creative harmonizing, and I think it's a really good way of dealing with this problem of functions manifesting differently in different types. So in a lot of functions, or sorry, a lot of systems like MBTI, I think it's not maybe base MBTI, but it's a lot of systems that piggyback off from MBTI. They talk about things like auxiliary function, demonstrative, etc., etc. And while that's good, it's still lacking, and I think it's a lot to remember. It's not very systems. It's not a great systems approach, which is I think what I'm looking for in typology. Not entirely sure why that is. I think maybe the elegance of a very systematic approach. It makes it seem more legitimate to me, at least. And I also quite like the subfunctions approach because it's quite a I think it's quite a human, it's almost got an evolutionary psychology aspect to it. So humans, social animals, living in groups, there's gonna be, in a social dynamic between different animals, between different people, there's going to be a balance between assertiveness and harmonizing, kind of narcissism versus whatever the opposite of that is. Stuff needs to get done, but everyone needs to be happy. There's a lot of ways you could phrase it, but as social animals, the idea of functions being used in two different ways, one that's more assertive, one that's more harmonizing, I think rings quite true. And creative as well. I mean, creative is I guess it's human also. Human creativity, human problem solving is it's quite a defining aspect of the human species. So from that perspective, the subfunctions they don't feel too arbitrary. So I like that. Some other notes. Yes, so with typology, I think there's always a really apparent need to essentially just add more words, add more terms. And while sometimes it can be a bit much, sometimes it feels like you have experts in certain branches of typology, and it's quite it would just take a lot of time and effort to get to grips with it and be able to talk about it with other people. And I think subfunctions, yes, you're adding more terms, but I think it's maybe an easier system than other systems, than is seen in other systems. I'm just going to skip to model. This is Model G, and this is just to talk about the energy system. So I think the energy system is another one of those elegant aids to communication about typology, whereas before you'd have 8 function slots, 8 different names, etc., etc. Energy segments it slightly more and makes it it streamlines that communication slightly, whilst retaining detail, which is good. And I think energy is Victor Galenko's idea, or at least he fleshed it out. Resolves contradictions with functions. So yeah, for an example, you get extroverted feeling in one type, and you get it in another type. And I've had this when I've been trying to explain functions to people. So there's seeming contradictions. So I think anyone who's into this kind of stuff will have come across this, where you'd be like, you have an idea of a function in your head, and you look at one person, you look at another person, you're like, oh yeah, they're both doing broadly the same thing. But then you dig down a bit, or someone comes along and says, oh, what about that? You dig into it, and you find contradictions, or you find a lack of correlation. They manifest in different ways, but they still feel the same. I don't know if that's a really NI explanation of cognitive functions, but really what I'm getting at is that the subfunctions allow for how to put it. It resolves those contradictions. You can say FE here and FE here. It's both FE, but it's being used in different ways. That's kind of what I have to say about that for now. Not particularly eloquent, but good enough. So yeah, overall, I like subfunctions. I'm excited to start thinking about them and seeing where it leads, streamlining my thoughts about it. So I also laid out a couple more tables, just to be able to talk about Model G versus Model V. So yeah, I'll start with Model V. So what Ben has done, he has swapped around the 5 and 6 functions with the 7 and 8 functions. Oh no, that's wrong. He shuffled around the functions. Swapped around the middle two, I think, and it'll make more sense. One sec. Here we go. So yeah, swapped around the 8 to the 4. 4 to the 3. 6 to the 8. Yeah. Anyway, I'll go through it one by one. It'll probably make more sense. So here's an INTP reference type. I've just had a thought about how obviously typologies, it's a model. So I like to use the word, and this is taken from Ben as well. I like to use the term reference type. It removes from the kind of mystical aspect of Jungian typology and MBTI that comes about often, and helps push into that kind of Dario Nardi-led empirical side of things. So reference type. So starting off, the highest energy functions remain the same. However, the high energy functions, and what are they called in Model G and Model V? Optimum energy. Yeah, it's probably better. But when I was doing my own thinking, I went with highest high, low lowest. I think it's pessimum, minimum and pessimum. Yeah, they're probably better. Better descriptors, the words used in Model V and Model G. Model V uses different ones though. In your wheelhouse, okay. Unsung allies, hot for and disdained. Yeah, I was going to talk about this. So hot for, I thought it was quite funny. I was watching some talk Ben was doing, and I related to the kind of, not obsession with, but the kind of, I'm very drawn to the kind of Jules aspect of typology, the idea that there's some innate compatibility between certain types. I think it provides a really good foundation for bouncing off from thinking about types and intertype relations. So yeah, and the other two people with him didn't seem didn't seem as enamored with the idea, but maybe I read into that wrong. So yeah, the hot for section, yeah, that relates to duals and various intertype relational stuff. So that was funny. Disdained, yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I'm wondering if these are, so I wonder if just the energy dynamic's been removed entirely. It's rather a kind of attitude towards functions rather than an energy thing going on here. That's something I'd be interested to look into. Well, yeah, one of the big changes I think is swapping around, swapping in the INTP reference type. In model G, TE is a pessimum energy, lowest energy function, whereas in model V, it becomes a high energy optimum ally function. And I like that. And swapping around that function, I think in every type, not just INTP, throughout the whole system, I think really works. There was two things wrong with having that particular function in model G, with having, for example, in this ENFJ reference type, having FI. Wait a minute. Oh, I put this wrong. So in an ENFJ reference type, where you can see FI here, it would have been SE. And I think it ended up there, but because it's a valued function, and so what I'm getting at is that I think it's more elegant having both in all the thinking functions of a type, or all the feeling functions, or all the let's say the dominance feeling, the anti-verted function of that would also be high energy and strong. And the same with the auxiliary function, let's say it's NI, NE, the extroverted or introverted version of that is also a strong function. I think that makes more sense. It fits more with how I see types, where it makes a lot of sense to me that someone dominant in feeling, for example, is also going to be good at extroverted feeling, is also going to be good at introverted feeling. Yeah, that seems right to me. Yeah, that's all I've got to say for now. So I also stole or screenshotted a lot of these summaries from one of Ben's videos. I thought I'd just read through them quickly and see if there's any comments I have. So, extroverted sensing, one that, I mean, all the functions are still a bit nebulous to me, but one that, from my assessment of myself, is probably one I don't use particularly well. So, main, stimulation and attention, immersing. Oh yeah, SE, I say sensing. I like the use of instincting instead. I think that's a better term for it. Awareness in the present, yeah. Perception related to thought, calmness under pressure. And you see, I find myself to be quite calm under pressure. So I don't know. I feel like that term's a bit vague, but maybe I am good with my SE. Attention is the essential feature of willpower, single focus, so I'm bad at that. Maybe calmness under pressure comes under extroverted intuition, or extroverted intuiting. Assertive force, sensorics. That's a good word. Not sure what it means. Combat in some sports. Yeah, so I'm quite into cycling, which I think is for a purely physical sport, Yeah, I think it's low on SE. It's interesting. Hierarchy. Yeah, I don't find myself. Basically, I think that fits. I think yeah, you can use all those terms. But okay, let's say assertive, right? So I see strong SE types. I can see them being assertive, but I think a good test of this would be to try and think of a situation in which someone I've typed as a type that should have really high energy preferred use of SE, where they don't appear quite assertive. So yeah, I can see where like an ISFP, for example, wouldn't be very assertive. They'd maybe express more of this creative or harmonizing SE. So that's interesting. Like it, yeah, the subfunctions do help clear up that difference where you can have two types that seem so different and yet are both supposed to use SE really strongly. So yeah, I think the conscious and unconscious side of things could come into it as well, with the functions in red here being the functions in red. These ones they're unconscious in most systems. I don't know exactly what they're meant to be. I think that the term unconscious probably fits with Model V as well. Yeah, so this is the thing with a lot of with each function and in each type. There's a lot of variables that go into the exact manifestation of that function. Yeah, and I think subtypes help clear things up, and yeah. Okay, because of the emotional component of instincting, facial expressivity may be involved. Thespians. I feel like I should know what that means. Is it like a? I'm going to look it up. Some kind of salesman or kind of actor, or just look it up. Come on, thespian. No, drama and theatre, an actor. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, someone who's. Yeah, got it. Okay, SI. Let's move on. I don't know how long this is, but let's keep going. Okay, habits. Yes, I mean that's habit, routine, orthodoxy. That's a very stereotypical idea about SI. Due to super id, more self-imposing. Yeah, okay, I can see that. Not quite sure with that. Assertive SI, stabilize, make regular, schedule, doing this to others. Okay, yeah. Supplying and supervising. Okay, yeah. See, I've been thinking about logistics somewhat, and I'm not sure about the notation here, but I've always thought logistics to be a kind of almost FE endeavor, but that's my own thoughts. Imaginative, subjective, sensation, instinct. Affected by past personal experience. I've heard that before. Uncreative, risky career. Yeah, I remember Ben's comments on this. Okay. And then harmonizing. So this is a very, I personally find SI to be a harmonizing function. I really don't relate to the assertive side of things. This assertive definition of SI, and really I don't relate to the imaginative side either. Really, for me, SI is only harmonizing in my head. Yeah, whereas I could see how SI in like an ESTJ, for example, an ESTJ being stereotypically kind of like a manager, business and kind of type thing. Yeah, I can see how SI would manifest as this assertive side of things. But then when I think about that, when I think about assertive instincting, assertive introverted instincting, really I just think of SE. And so with Model V bringing all of the sensing functions in an ESTJ into the high energy, skilled, well-used functions, it almost blurs the lines between introverted sensing and extroverted sensing, or between the introverted and extroverted sides of functions, when they become more closely related. So yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of try and pick them apart a bit more. That's just one of the, it's where I'm a bit fuzzy in my head about this at the moment. So yeah, on to intuiting. So extroverts, intuiting. Okay, opportunistic. Stealing someone's glasses they left off. That was a funny comment. My own dad does that too. We'll just pick things up from the ground. But that was more of an SE opportunity, apparently, according to Ben's ideas. So anyway, seeing the commonalities, creating roles across situations that Guardians like. Okay. Subfunctions. So yeah, world as possibilities. See, I don't relate to that massively. Like the idea of travel is it's very exciting, it's very enticing, but the actual act of doing it is something that's, or even planning it, eludes me more often than not. So yeah, maybe assertive NE is something not too used in INTPs, that kind of thing. Yes, and then when I think about ENFPs, I know, and Ben seemed to suggest that ENFPs would have more assertive empirical intuiting, extroverted intuiting. When I think about the ENFPs, I know, yeah, they do seem more prone to travel and actively exploring possibilities. Creative, transcontextual, transcontextual thinking. Particular kind of humour. Douglas Adams, yeah. I always thought of Douglas Adams as INTJ in MBTI. I mean, like ITP in sociologics. Creating metaphors, perception of similarities, looking at things from different points of view. Yeah. Not much to say on those, really. Creating metaphors, perception. There was something mentioned about really distanced similarities. So, I'll find myself trying to use like analogies that are so distant from the original thing I'm trying to analogize that it's useless to a lot of people. I'll be talking about healthy vegetables in terms of I don't know, like the solar system. I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense, but you get the idea, I think. Really distant analogies. So I could kind of see that being the creative side of extroverted intuition. And I think, a lot of humour does come from that, where I think with humour there's always a grain of truth. That's what makes humour funny sometimes. And with a really, really distant analogy that doesn't quite make it, it's comedically, it's so ridiculously not the same thing, so ridiculously incomparable, and yet you're watching it play out and think, yeah, they are quite similar, even though the two subject matters are so different. I know that was extremely abstract, but I'm really bad at thinking of examples for my abstract ideas. So Different points of view, yeah, totally. I can see that. Harmonizing, yeah, makes sense. You're bringing the group together by trying to make different points of view seem, by helping people see different points of view. Yeah. Intuiting, subjective intuiting, subjective and empirical. I like that as well. I always try and think of introversion and extroversion in those terms. I think it saves a lot of confusion. Faith and archetypes, inspiration. Yeah, and I will admit again, NI, it's a weird one. It's a very weird one. Prediction and hunches, developing / changing towards a future intuitive goal. And there was talk about cycles regarding this. Imaginative art and guiding invisible hands to think in the right direction. Inspiration, aha, insights into solutions. Okay. And then harmonizing relates to submissive aspects. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what that word exactly means. Relates to submissive aspect. Harmonizing. Yeah. I'm sure there's more to the harmonizing side of NI. Yeah, imaginative inspiration. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. I do like to intuiting in general. I see as a nebulous process, one that you really, by the time you sat down and worked out how your intuition came to a certain conclusion, that you've already missed the bus. It's interesting working through the process of one's own intuition, and I think it can provide insight into oneself, sort of picking through how one's intuition works. And with extroverted intuition, you can I think it's easier to pick out how it works. You can look and see how you can think about the things that you subconsciously noticed, and then realize, yeah, I brought those two things together. That makes sense. With introverted intuition, it makes sense that it can be a lot more of a problem to understand quickly. Yeah, not much to say really. I think I struggle to think of subjective functions as assertive, but yeah, again, I like that, and I can see where it's going, and looking at this doesn't make me think there's a problem with this subfunctions idea, so it's good. TE, accepted theoretical laws, theory of evolution, scientific method, empiricism, empirical based thinking. Actually, I'm going to have to go back here. So what was that's it, backseat driver for the fourth function. So that would be in a INTP, TE would be the backseat driver function. And I can see personally why it makes sense to call that function backseat driver, because at least for myself, I'll be coming up with an idea, following it down an avenue, and then an avenue of thought, and then reality gets in the way, and then you have to reality being empirical thinking, extroverted thinking. Yeah, it's almost like a sort of double check that comes in every so often and make sure that TI is remaining grounded in reality almost. Hard to explain. So assertive, here we go, business, legal laws, conventional. Yeah, keep the process working, keep everything working properly. It's working. We'll deal with if we, as long as we keep everything working, we can maybe solve any problems with it. I appreciate assertive TE. Creative, application and practical thinking, social, imaginative, business logic, venture capital, investing and whatnot. Want us to change with the market to anticipate it. Okay. Learning the craft, learning the principles. Okay. Yeah. So you got to learn the basics before you can change the world. Okay. Yeah. That one lacks detail to me. Creative extroverted thinking. I think of inventors when I think of creative TE, Leonardo da Vinci kind of thing. And then harmonizing, pragmatic compromises, looking for consistency between facts. Yeah, law is definitely a good example of this for me. Pragmatic compromises, yeah, where two people are wanting let's say two people are coming to conflict. They both want something, but in each person, both of them can't get exactly what they want, and TE is a good way of dealing with that compromise. I like it. Okay, now on to TI. Subjective-based thinking, subjective premises, structural logic, will to systemization, categorize and define. So I mean, surely this is what's happening now. This is what Model V is. Structural logic, systemization, defining things, categorize. Subfunctions, assertive, logic of uniform structure, like TI plus, I'm right. Yeah, I'm not sure on the plus minus stuff. That's something I've not looked into. Or I have, but it didn't sink in. Logic of uniform structure, like TI plus, I'm right. Yeah, like when you know you're right and you're just like, yeah, I can see that. Imaginative, speculative thought experiments. I think I was doing that before. I've probably done it multiple times in this video. Thinking as someone else thinks, especially a character. Expediency when with SE. Expediency. Thinking as someone else thinks. Yeah, I find I do that when I'm watching a fictional TV show or movie or anything. And I'll almost see it as a plot hole when a character doesn't do what I think they should do. It's interesting. And just being able to relate to fictional characters quite strongly, even though it's all utterly made up. So yeah, thinking as someone else thinks. Yeah, I think that's what that means. Anyway, integration of theories, harmonizing. Okay, yeah. So I can see why that fits under harmonizing. Yeah. Saying you're both right and you're both wrong. Here's even better. Yeah. Okay, on to feeling. Empirical feeling. Group morality, religion, and emotion reading. Yeah. Assertive, demonstrative, and dramatic emotions. Yeah, like using. It's almost like proving how strongly you feel about something almost. Yeah, demonstrative. Creative performing arts with SE. Yeah, I mean that's I think I don't have any statistics, but it seems to me that feeling and instincting come together quite often in that way. Ability to artistically control facial expressivity, body language, tone of voice, instruments played by the subfunction. Yeah, not much to say about that. Group harmony, focus on others. Again, that's not much to say. Yeah, a bit bare bones. Not sure. I mean, that is my stereotypical definition of FE, group harmony. But then I've seen ESFJs, ESFPs, ISFJs, and ISFPs. Well, less so ISFPs. All very so much more on the assertive side. I think my theory there was that personally I have a fear around group harmony more than they do. They're more competent. They know where they can push the boundaries and sacrifice some group harmony for a bit of assertiveness and excitement. Whereas it feels as if I care more about harmony, but maybe I just don't know where the boundaries are, and therefore, push for harmony when it's not needed. It's interesting. And finally, FI. EXTP bad at all these. That's I can agree with that. Empathy. It's quite simple. Yeah, I mean, empathy is a fairly broad term. Authenticity. So the assertive FI, subjective / idiosyncratic ethics, I'm right, so that's similar to TI. Yeah, going against the social grain, definitely. Delta NS tend to be consensus oriented. Okay. I see, whilst using FI. Okay. Well, yeah. Gamma SFs tend to be individualist. Gamma, that's Kearsey temperament. Yeah, and I need to look into, is Kearsey Guardians or is that someone else? Look at the Guardians terminology and all that. I can't remember any of the other terms, but something I'm aware of but have no understanding of really. Yeah, temperament, something to look into personally. Gamma SFs tend to be individualist. Okay. Imaginative, especially putting one's art and especially putting oneself into the center of a character, as that character, not as oneself in that position. Okay, yeah, I've seen ISFPs be really good at this and also do it just for fun. Ethics of relations. Could be any, integrating different points of view. Yeah, so this is the harmony side of FI. I find, I suppose it's understanding how others feel about things rather than other people's positions, or rather than other people's points of view or thoughts. Yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah, I like that. But it's all quite elegant. I think this does cover, the subfunctions do cover essentially every manifestation of every function. It's good. So I think that's it. I've been through everything. Yeah, that's the blank screen of death at the end of a slideshow. Yeah, so a bit of a ramble, but got my thoughts out there. Got to start somewhere. I've been, it's all been in my head for a long time. Yeah, I'm glad to have just talked about it for a bit. I hope there's some interesting ideas in there that are useful. And yeah, I'm continually following Model G, and it really feels like a step forward. So yeah, I hope that was interesting. Thank you very much.